if you see a musician who seems to improve much faster than everyone else, then chances are that they're not actually more talented. They're just better at choosing the right things to work on. And the heart of this is one key question that the best musicians use to ensure that they make such rapid progress. I'm going to tell you what it is and how you can use it to get much better results for yourself. Hi, I'm Morley-Fletcher from Play in the Zone, and I bring you regular tips on how to improve much faster as a musician and to enjoy your music more by developing your mindset and your mental skills. And that most important question that you need to ask yourself is this: what is the biggest thing holding me back? If you're feeling stuck, then chances are that you haven't identified the answer to that question. In this video, I'll explain why it's just so important, and I'll show you how you can use it in practice to make big strides forward with your music. And make sure to stick around to the end, because I'm going to go through a selection of some of the very varied areas that could be the biggest thing holding you back. And these go much wider than most people think. So it's definitely worth having that information coming in, because a lot of musicians just don't even consider the areas that are actually their biggest sticking points. And while you're watching, make sure to like, share and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. Now, asking yourself, what's the biggest thing that's holding me back, can seem like kind of an obvious thing to do. But what most people do instead is they tend to ask themselves, what do I really want to work on? And usually they're not the same. The bottlenecks, if you like, the things that are restricting your progress the most are typically not exciting things to work on, and they're often things we'd rather avoid. But they are the key to making huge progress, because when you find the right things, some things are inherently much more important than others. So you do a little bit of work on those really important things and you can see huge progress, versus doing a whole load of work on the other things that are great but just not so important and much less progress from those. So finding these things that are holding you back, that's the small amount of work that's going to open big doors for you. And conversely, all those things that you want to work on, if there is something that is holding you back, restricting your progress, you can do all that you like on those other things. You may be moving forward in those areas a huge amount, but none of it's coming through because you've got this blockage, this bottleneck that is keeping you from using all that other progress that you've made. And if asking yourself that question, what is the biggest thing holding me back, isn't ringing any bells for you, try turning it around and think about this idea that the most effective things to do, small amounts of work can open big doors. Ask it that way. What is the one thing that I could work on that would open all sorts of other doors for me? And that might be a way to get at the answer. And to give you a practical example of this, one of the things that was a big bottleneck for me in the past was my performance skills. So how do I actually deliver all the technique, all the musical skill that I already have when I'm up on stage at a gig and it's challenging situations, the pressure's on, all those sorts of things that come up in the real world. And this is actually quite a nice example of how both versions of that question can work, because it really was the biggest thing holding me back. It didn't really matter whether my practice was going well, whether I learned new tunes amazingly, all those sorts of things. If I was falling apart when I got up on stage, none of that mattered. If I wanted to get anywhere, I had to fix that big blockage that was basically pulling everything else down to its level. But on the positive side, how does that open lots of doors? Well, I've already done the work. I've got all this technique, I've got all these abilities that I could put out there if I had the chance to do so. And when I improve my performance skills, my ability to just get up there and play under pressure, all of a sudden, all of those things that I've already worked on can come out in performance and I get the full benefit of them. Plus, anything that I work on like that in the future, I'm going to get the full value from it. Whereas if I don't sort out my performance skills, if I don't sort out my ability to get in the zone, perform under pressure, I can keep working on everything in the practice room in the future, and I'm just not going to see the benefits. Now, at this point, we need to talk a little bit about mindset, because it turns out that the most important things for you to work on are often the ones that you don't want to do, that make you feel a bit uncomfortable. And that example of mine with the performance skills was definitely one of those. I did not really want to get into putting myself in pressure environments just to get better at doing it. It was uncomfortable, but that was the biggest thing for me to work on. And this means two things. So the first is, don't judge yourself harshly for not having done this before. If you look at things and you say, actually, I've been avoiding working on the most important things for ages, that's a great realization, but don't feel bad about it. This is very normal because they do tend to be uncomfortable things. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is just be aware that once you've worked this out and you thought, great, this is what I'm going to work on, that's not the end of it. It's going to take continued application and resolve to stick with it, probably, because if these things are uncomfortable, you will be tempted to slack off or to go after something else that's a little bit more comfortable. So just two things to bear in mind there. And finally, I just want to give you a few ideas of some of the different areas that might be the things that are holding you back, just so you can see how wide and varied they are, and maybe this will spark some ideas for you. This isn't everything, so feel free to find something completely different, but it's interesting to see how wide some of these things go. So it could be any area of music that you practice. That's the obvious place to start. Whether technique, specific areas of that, repertoire, all those sorts of things. It can also be, as I said before, performance skills is a really big one for a lot of people. It was for me. It could be about, well, how consistent are you with your practice? Maybe it's not what you're doing in the practice room, but actually finding a way to be more consistent. It could be about building up your confidence. It could be finding ways to increase your motivation if that's what's holding you back because you're just not motivated. It could be, well, who are the musicians that you're playing with? Maybe the biggest thing that would help you would be to play with a different set of musicians, maybe a more advanced set of musicians. How can you change things so that that changes for you? All those different bits. Another one might be, how able are you to focus, both when you're practicing or when you're performing? Again, something that can be often overlooked, but hugely important to work on if that's something that's not perfect for you. So I hope you can see that some of those things go an awful lot wider than the typical topics that people think about in terms of, well, what do I need to work on? And I'd love for you to let me know in the comments below what the biggest thing is holding you back. Maybe it's one on the list, or maybe it's actually something I didn't mention at all, and I'd definitely be interested in hearing what that might be. Now, I definitely recommend checking out my video on how the desire to look good might be stopping you from getting good next. And if you like the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.